Welcome to the Afghanistan Project Podcast. I'm Beth Bailey, and today I'm excited to introduce our guest, Zainab Homam, the founder and CEO of the Awesta Charitable Organization, which started in 2005 to help young people obtain education, employment, and technological skills. While Awesta has had to discontinue its programming in Afghanistan in 2018, Zainab is still in contact with many Afghans who reach out to her for support in the post-withdrawal period. Awesta also continues to support refugees in the UK, and this includes a lot of refugees from Afghanistan. So, Zainab, thank you for joining us today to talk about your work through Awesta and the help you've provided to Afghans, as well as something that's unique for us. Here we usually talk about the SIV program, humanitarian parole, and, P1, P2, and now we get to talk about the equivalents of those in the UK. So I hope our readers or listeners are strapped in for a lot of information.
Well, hello to you, Beth. Thank you very much for having me into your program. I think it's also I'll take the opportunity also to since you have introduced Awesta as a charitable organization, also to pay tribute to the founder of what we have rebranded as Awesta, now known as Afghan Action, Chris Beals, who unfortunately died last month, and I thought maybe it's a good platform, good time at least to pay tribute and also remind ourselves that he contributed massively in helping Afghanistan, people inside Afghanistan and in the UK. And in fact, Afghan Action was Chris Beals' legacy, which recently, for many reasons, we decided to rebrand this. And one of the key reasons was to be more inclusive after the latest influx of immigrants and refugees into the UK.
Oh, wow. I'm really sad to hear about Chris's passing, but it sounds like he has left quite the legacy, and I'm glad that we get to talk about that today.
Definitely.
There are so many people who've given so much, and they all deserve to get to tell their story, or you can tell that too. Well, can we talk first about Awesta's programming in Afghanistan, when it started, what you were doing through those years leading up to 2018, and how many people you were able to reach and the skills you were able to teach them?
Sure. So the charity was founded back in 2005. That is after the first fall of Taliban back in then, and it started its activities. At the time, the majority or the focus of its activities were in Afghanistan, where it built a training center, providing training sessions for young women and young men. The program was as such that trainees were starting in the morning, learning literacy, numeracy, and IT skills, which was very basic at the time. And then they were provided a lunch, which was funded by our donors. And then in the afternoon, they would have learned rug weaving, which is a tradition in Afghanistan, and not just tradition, one of the key heritages of Afghanistan for many years or centuries maybe. And also for some who were keen in learning how to make clothes. So we also had sewing classes in Kabul, in Afghanistan. And during the time, so it has been 19 years. Next year, literally, we will be having our 20th anniversary. Our training center was active until 2018. Unfortunately, our activities were very much impacted after the withdrawal of the international community from Afghanistan, mainly the British troops, because we were getting support in terms of bringing the rugs that were being made in Afghanistan into the UK and selling them in the UK, and that's how charity itself sustained itself through its work. And then after that, the bulk of our focus was, of course, in the UK, since we had activities, but not as much, because we literally the focus on our spending was more into Afghanistan than here. But also throughout the time that the charity was active in the UK, there was, it built a huge network with the government entities as well as private and non-private or not-for-profit organizations, and built quite good reputation of itself here in the UK. In terms of how I joined the charity, I think it was 2010. I was keen since charity work has always, in a way, has been in our blood. My mother run the IRC International Rescue Committee branch back in Pakistan, where she helped a lot of women. Probably, if I am not wrong, up to 30,000 women in that center who graduated from computer and English classes in Pakistan. And we learned the language there. We got our initial trainings from that center that had a provision for women. So in the UK, after I graduated, I was very keen, since I had young kids and I couldn't in that time commit myself to a full-time job. So I was looking for something to do voluntarily. My volunteering started with my local college, where I provided training, the same thing, training IT, numeracy and literacy skills for Ford car company employees, or shall I say the ones, the people who were made redundant. And then at the same time, while I was doing that, I don't know how, I truly do not remember how I got contacted by the charity Afghan Action at the time. And then I looked into its model and the work, and I was very, very keen to learn more about it, and in a way even join it if I could, because this is one of the charities that doesn't feed you fish, but it teaches you how to catch the fish. So that's something that I think throughout of our lives we have learned to be more independent and not dependent. So I met with Chris and I joined. That was the year 2010 that I joined as a volunteer, and I continued until 2014 when Chris was stepping down from the hard work that he was doing, and he was moving out of London as well. And then I stepped up and took over as the CEO of the charity. By then I had some experience that I was kind of giving me the confidence to run the charity. Unfortunately, this was the year also that coincided with the pullout of the international community from Afghanistan, and the security threats that we actually received for more for our students in the country. And then we had to take the very hard and difficult decision of closing the center for good, and until we're just hoping that things get better. But as we all know now, unfortunately, things never got better, at least not until now. And we decided to literally close that center and keep the network and the work, but more in the UK. We have had a lot of activities, conferences at international level, even during our work in there. I must say that every program that was on Afghanistan, we have been key members of with various organizations at both national and regional and international level. So we kind of kept that focus, at least to be a voice, if not practically in the country. In 2001, after the second unfortunately fall of Afghanistan into the hands of Taliban, we were contacted by various organizations right from the beginning. The daunting experience of the fall and how we will get in contact to reach out for people and to help them from across Afghanistan and the UK. Various government agencies here in the UK contacted us to check whether we have got a staff member in Afghanistan and whether there are people who we might be able to help or willing to help. So that's when we got our activities intensively started in the UK in helping the refugees, and that experience. I heard some of the friends that you interviewed in your previous interviews speaking about it, and kind of were reminding me of how those days, how difficult they were, in fact, and what I struggled for us even here in the UK, in a way, trying to help while we felt helpless ourselves. I recall the days that I literally had to work 18 hours per day, taking calls, making sure people were okay, and those that we thought that we could pull out with the help of MOD, who was actively on the ground in those few days, and asking them for their documents, for passports, or whatever, that daunting task that I had never ever done. So much affecting even us later personally when I recall that, and again, not the help that I thought or I hoped that we could provide at the time, not that we did, and um, that's something that put kind of more pressure on us and as individuals and as the organization to now. Well, other people are coming now, so what next? So how are we going to help them? They will be here. We know that we of course, following the news, we knew that they are coming in huge numbers, and there were calls on charity organizations to come and help, but we were struggling to find out where they were based, who to go to, who can help. So it was something that we were highly engaged, but at the same time felt helpless ourselves as organizations, not to be able to find that one organizations, if there were any or organizations, to give us details, or for us to get involved in helping them. So yeah, I guess that is some of the experience that I can remember, at least.
Yeah, there's so much to delve into here. Like, I want to
Absolutely.
go back first to the, you're teaching people the traditional Afghan art of handicrafts and sewing and things like that are so integral to Afghans. And it's something that I've seen with so many groups that are stepping in to provide education right now, where, the girls are not allowed to be educated above the 6th grade, but there are lots and lots of secret schools. And that's a huge part of their curriculum too, is learning how to make, maybe leather bags or make rugs. And I wanted to understand, I've always wondered, why is that? Outside of it just being a traditional handicraft, is that also a way that you can ensure economic productivity in the event of something like what the Taliban have done, where now these people you've educated at least can make some kind of income from home, even if they're not allowed to work? Or is that just really to promote the arts and cultures of Afghanistan?
That's a very good question. So we have, I unfortunately, for the safety of our women and girls, I cannot name the location, but we do have the classes for girls in certain areas, and we do not name it under the charity. And also there are trainings for not just for the basic education, um, but for also those as a very special, if I say a specialist, not individually or as an organization, but myself, but also by friends and family members, and we are all part of that. For instance, doctors who could not finish their studies, they're getting that help, or engineers, and we are hoping that we can, with fundings and with time and good support, we could actually increase those support as well. As to handicraft, it has been part of the absolutely Afghanistan's culture. I probably will be interesting to share an experience myself, that my mother was actually putting pressure on us to learn a skill besides whatever we study or we learn at school. And that was mainly for us was, well, anything. She never restricted us to anything particularly. For instance, whether it was selling or making something or opening a socket or a plug or wiring or unwiring, any of those skills. And I myself, I hated stitching, and but my mom was giving us something, and of course I couldn't say no to that, so I had to learn. And I'm not very good at it, but I know how things are made. I've got that basic knowledge. Whereas my other sisters, I remember one of them, especially my eldest sister, she was very keen and she was like doing it meticulously, with so much focus, and even making her own dresses. As with Taliban, well, I mean, their ideology does not support education for women at all. I don't think if they care about women learning anything, but just to serve them as their wives, or, as a maybe entity at home. To be honest, have been some very sad references from Taliban that to them, that I have at least read in multiple texts, that for them probably it doesn't even matter if a woman exists or doesn't exist. Of course they cannot live without one because they're born from them, but if they had the choice, when people talk about gender apartheid, I think they would have eliminated women. So I think it's people who choose that, okay, now that the schools are closed, then let's at least make something or do something at home. I have been contacted, well, I get actually contacts, I'll probably be not exaggerating if I say that, on daily basis, from people that sometimes they ask for some basic funding so that they can buy the resources where they can stay at home and make something. Just for and it's not always for as a hobby or for the fun of it. It's for a source of income. In terms of schools, there are some schools that are running currently in Afghanistan, and probably Taliban are aware of those, but I would rather not give the full description of how it's done, because I don't want to give them the knowledge that how these schools function. However, we know for a fact that the schools have to deliver the curriculum that the Taliban expect them to be taught to the youngsters, and also some parents would not allow their girls, especially young girls. I don't know how much you have followed the recent news of how Taliban are literally picking girls and forcing them into their cars for whatever excuses they make, and taking them. And we have received photos and video clips of some of these girls who have been tortured badly. And in fact, 2 days ago, I received an image of a girl who literally could not see because they literally had hit her into her eyes, and also forcing them to take their clothes off, and then hitting them, as well as committing other crimes against girls and women. Taliban, maybe in the cities more, they are behaving in front of the cameras. Especially, we have seen some vloggers and who went to Afghanistan and filmed, and to see to the world how safe and perfectly fine everything is. But unfortunately, that's not the case, because they know where to behave and where not to behave. So I think right now the one of the ways that women and girls are kind of are looking to get some peaceful time is that staying at home and making the time and learning some handicraft, or doing something that they can do safely in the comfort of their own homes. But if they had the option, they would have definitely gone back to their schools and continue with their education.
Absolutely. Yeah, I talked to Afghan women who are very much, they were working in offices, and then the Taliban took that away from them, and now they're at home with nothing to do. And at least in that case, if you have something like, a tapestry that you're weaving or clothes that you're making, you have something that keeps you feeling like you're contributing in some way, like you're doing something. I can see the immense value in that, even just psychologically, instead of just seeing nothing but the walls of your home passing by as the sun, moves through your house every day. You're seeing, okay, well, look, I'm making this. I'm not doing nothing. So I think that's really, it's a beautiful thing. It is a way to make money. It's a skill that gets passed down. So Afghan tradition doesn't get totally wiped out by the Taliban, because wouldn't they love to do that? I keep hearing all these excuses for, this is Afghan culture that it's Afghan culture that women will wear the burqa. And when you talk to Afghan women, they say, no, maybe in small parts of Afghanistan, but not everywhere. And it's definitely not Afghan tradition for a man to lay his hand on a woman. They're
Well,
totally
it's
bastardizing the culture.
oh, absolutely. Well, it's interesting you're mentioning about, first of all, about the burqa. Burqa comes from India. And this was in the first, I think, after the first invasion of the British Empire, when it failed, then they go back to study the culture of Afghanistan, but in India, not in Afghanistan. And that's how I think it's a bit of a long history, but in a short, it literally is imported from India, and Afghanistan never had that culture. The culture, the way women dressed was a beautiful one and very feminine, very intricate. Jewelry was a must for women to wear, and with that, of course, any sort of makeup that was fashion at that time. So that is not what Afghanistan culture was. Yes, with the name of Afghanistan, because Afghanistan has been named as Afghanistan again by the British about 150 years ago. Before that, the name as Ariana or Bacteria or Khorasan, any of these names reflected the culture then. But with the new name, unfortunately, the new things were imported into Afghanistan and enforced on the people, in fact. So that's not what is being portrayed today by the Taliban or enforced is not the true picture of the country and the mentality of its people. It's rather more educated. And I must emphasize that the education was so important in every families that parents were literally taunting each other, like as sisters, siblings, and all that. Your children are not going to education. Oh no, they should be. It's something that they would have ensured that their girls and boys go to school and they study. And also today, talking about why women now as breadwinners, there is a statistics, and I think it's one of the watch groups, whether it's economic watch groups, and it's based in the US as well. And I listened to this morning that it said that estimated that 150,000 educated or expertise have left Afghanistan just in the past 2 years. So if a country loses all that, one part of its asset, that the human resources, then of course the pressure is going to fall back on the whoever is there to make sure that they take charge and support their families. And unfortunately, in this 150,000, the people that were trained, the younger, and this is majority the younger generation who received their education and at international level of education and work experience in Afghanistan for the past 20 years. And currently the country have lost that, unfortunately.
Yeah. Oh, it's a huge thing. And we're not talking about it really. The brain drain scenarios and then, yeah, there are so many things to overcome. I was talking with someone who will be on the podcast in a couple weeks, I believe, just talking about it's at least a 20-year hole that has been dug in this country in just 3 years, which is, and it sounds maybe a little over the top, but I really don't think it is. I think it's, once again, they've gone back. It took 5 years to get them to the point that one of our guests said that they weren't at zero when he came in 2002 with the army to try to rebuild Afghanistan. They were at like -50.
Absolutely.
And that took 5 years for the Taliban to do that. And now they've had almost 3, and we're back. So
unfortunately, yes, going back to the zero. Yeah.
It's really unfortunate. I did want to ask you more to get into more depth about your time during the withdrawal and what that was like, because you touched on it, those 18-hour days and all that uncertainty. And I just wondered, you've listened to Americans talk about their experience. How did yours differ? Were you sending people to different, locations than the ones that we've heard about on the US side? Like we always hear about Abbey Gate. Where were you working in, to support people to go to when you were talking to Afghans?
So, because we were already known to, we were a registered organization. We had a presence on the internet and a work presence, of course, as well as our connections. And also, we were in the. First, even when we received our first contact was from one of the representatives of MOD, Ministry of Defense, who contacted us and then to check, making sure that our colleagues are safe on the ground, which I truly appreciate at the time. And I was like, okay, this is brilliant. At least we know that people are being taken care of. And that was the time that when we were advised to make a list of the people that we think that should be taken out. And that is literally when my work started, and to provide that list. But that's it. And then then whoever calls, the number does not work, so you cannot go back to find out that, okay, who am I sending all these numbers to? But I think 10 days had passed that I received a call from here in the UK from a representative from, I think it was from. I can't remember exactly whether it was the Foreign Office or Home Office. To be honest, I cannot remember. But we were given a number to contact and just find out. So I contacted that number, and then this lady who was taking all the details literally over the phone. So I had a list of 70 families from across Afghanistan, and 90% of these families have worked with either US or the British organizations in Afghanistan, and they felt extremely and and that they might lose their lives, or their families will be hurt by whatever was happening. And I think this was the time that Kabul, there was closures everywhere in Kabul, in the capital at least, even the shops, the markets and all that, and people were in their homes, but they were fearing that once the dust settles, then they will be coming after them. So I had to literally provide the 70 names for the 70 families of all their children's family members. I remember it was such a tough and intense call that I had to literally sit in the garden, just get some fresh air, just it doesn't affect my own life, and then send all those details, the telephone numbers, passport numbers, where they can be in touch and all those. And then after that, of course, as I'm doing this, these families, knowing that now I have taken their details, they keep calling me by hour, not even day, every one of them. What's going to happen? Where am I going to go? So amongst all of these was our colleague also, that we had given his name, and he was, we're trying, and bless him, Chris, at the time when he was alive, he was also helping, trying to get help at the same time. And we kept checking on our colleagues and people inside Afghanistan. And out of the numbers that we provided, even my colleague was not being, was not helped. And I think he jumped on another plane that was heading to France. So he somehow ended up there. And the other people who were waiting, the one thing that we were doing nonstop was literally to call them and see if they were all right, and to wait. But I could not say to them how long or the time and location where someone could come and see them, because I did not have any of those information myself. And so then I tried to post stuff, I think at the time, on my LinkedIn, and then some colleagues, and we found someone here in the government officials. Unfortunately, the time that the Afghanistan collapsed, a lot of the key member organizations, government organizations, they were on holiday. So it was very, very difficult to get hold of literally anyone. There was every second at the time felt like an hour, and even regardless of how many hours, and now we're talking by this time it's like days, we waited and we could not hear, we could not get help from anywhere. All again I had to do, or we had, a few of us including Chris had to do, is just call them or email them and just check and make sure they're all right. So it has been daunting. A lot of, sometimes, I mean, they were, bless them, they were very, very patient, but sometimes they were losing their patience as well, thinking that we are just a typical charitable organization who is probably making thousands of pounds from this or money from this, getting their names but doing nothing. We had actually even the consulate members here who were very worried about their families. They couldn't do anything. They're checking and, very patiently with us. And all I could say to them that I cannot do anything. I'm no one to be able to do anything. All I can do is that based on the advice that I have been given, I can get the names, send me as much information that you think that will help your families to get the necessary help. And I'm going to pass that. That at least was my promise, and I'll pass all those details on to them. But unfortunately, I could not deliver at least what I would have thought that I would be able to help. I couldn't do that.
It's so frustrating. And I ended up supporting an evacuation organization stateside when I found out about them. But for me, that was, December of 2021. I was not involved in that first, 18-hour days, craziness period. And even still, so much of what we did was just making sure that people didn't feel alone, because by that time they knew there was no plane coming to take them anywhere. And it was a waiting game, and it was terrifying, and there was no food, and there was, the Taliban were doing all their, citywide checks for guns,
yeah,
and papers to see if they could find previous government members. And, it was just it was so frustrating. And people would ask, do you know anyone who can help me? Here are all my papers. Here's my tazkira. Here's everything that identifies me. Please help me. And I would just keep sending them to, like, here's this organization. But I knew that organization's full. They can't take on anybody else. And the people who are there, like you, are totally overwhelmed. And I just can't even imagine being an Afghan in that scenario.
It was very difficult. It was very, very difficult. But then at the same time, I was hearing, so I was in touch, given, one of the, well, sometimes it becomes a responsibility, but I call it a blessing, at least at that time, that I had network across Europe and even US and Canada. So kept checking with everyone. And I remember that in France, they were telling me that there was an airplane literally packed with just from one family. So 350 people from just one family who were taken into France. And I was like, how are they being collected? Who is, there must be someone, where, we know the process of traveling, and we go through the airport, through the check-in, and through, how is this done for the people here? And above all, how can the safe people or people who be like civilians and those who could be threat, how can they be identified? So all of that was hitting us later, that how is this done? But for us here as organization, at least I can say, regardless of how much we tried and how many numbers we called day in day out, honestly, our phone bills, personally mine, they're increasingly sky high, because just trying to call whatever number that I could at least get these people out. Because the thing is, people already had the fear from Taliban. Things were so, they are very unpredictable. Even now, probably it's the aid money that keeps them calm. We know that they have actually taught us that lesson, that if anything goes against their or has gone against their wishes, then people had faced the consequences. So knowing that they're so unpredictable and people are scattered everywhere for this fear of their lives, it was a tough one. It was one of those months that you had to make sure that you survive this mental pressure and anxiety that's of course on us, trying to help people, yet feeling helpless, and at the same time trying to be calm and focused and be helpful as much as you can. It was I really hope we never experience such a thing again. Just really, really nasty experience.
Yeah, I feel the same way. And yet, everyone I have on who's been through this experience, I know that they don't want to live through it again, but I know that it made them, it almost made them stronger. And some of them probably would prefer to have not been stronger. But did you have that? I know for me, Afghanistan has given a lot more to me. Like, this effort has given more to me than it's taken from me. And it has taken an awful lot from me. But do you have that same feeling, or are you?
Well, we always say that. I mean, even I say it to my own children that we are born in war and we have lived through war. We have, migrated from country to country. Even though I was young, all that pressure of migration, where to go, where is safe, was on my parents, bless them. And yes, you're right that yes, it makes us stronger, but we do not count our losses, and we never get the exact number, or if we put a value or a price on that, we may not do that. And sometimes, and I totally understand the frustration of people here in the UK or US, some organizations or some movements who campaign against the immigration. And I ask, just maybe speaking with myself, and say, I wish you really knew that how much pain and how much suffering one has to go through in order to get themselves in somewhere that what they would call safety. I do not think, at least I can speak this confidently for Afghanistan, that anyone would wish to leave their home and emigrate to a country that is completely different to their culture, values, norms, language, religion, caste, whatever you name it. Everything's like you just leave a place and then you come to another country and you are a newborn adult. So you have to start from zero. I have lived that life, I've been through that turmoil myself, and I now see it, and I have seen it for the past 2 years. In the recent influx of the refugees from Afghanistan, and I honestly feel their pain and their suffering with every nerve in my body, because I know what they're thinking exactly, and I know what is going through their minds. One thing though I could say, and I say to them, that the recent refugees were a little bit we're not taking, of course, taking every suffering, everything that they have gone through into consideration, but also there's one thing that's made it easier probably compared to our times, is technology, because they came with their mobile phones, and if they needed to find someone, it made it easier, although only for those who could understand English or speak in English or know how to search in English. Not to more, that is the younger generation, majority of them, they were comfortable to go on their phone and check and find out, for instance, algorithmically check a name and then find out, and that's how some of them approach our organization, and they're calling me and say, oh, is this your charity? Yes. And I've just been here and I need help. And so I was like happy that okay, now people can find us. So and now I know. And that is when, and answering, even adding to the question earlier you asked with the help, and And that is when I found out that where they were. And I said to the lady that who first time contacted me, and I said, so tell me where you are exactly. He said, we are in this hotel, but she had no clue where the hotel was. I said, okay, do you know how to send me your location? And then she sent me the location, and then I found out where they were. So I went to visit them, and I went to see them and just, greet them and ask them if they need help. I could see that they were more literally dying to speak with someone that is in the country to guide them than asking for anything else. Although majority of them, they had brought nothing with them clothing wise, and they just they left with whatever they could. There were a few exceptions, I could say, that with some people that managed to get some money out as well, and they can just go out and buy whatever they needed. But they were I think very few numbers, not big.
That's just how many then? It sounds like there were many fewer Afghan refugees at the time of the withdrawal in the UK than there were in the US. I think it was somewhere around 100. I'd never get this number right, even though every time I ask the State Department a question about the withdrawal that insinuates that they did something that wasn't excellent, they're like, we saved 100 and this many thousand people. I'm like, oh yes, the Marines did do that for you, and the Army soldiers did do that for you, didn't they? Anyway, that's an aside. But we had over 100,000 refugees who came here in Operation Allies Welcome. How many were in the UK?
I don't think if UK is anywhere near that number.
Okay.
I know that there was a first announcement that we heard that UK said that it could take up to 5,000 refugees.
Okay.
So, but I also don't want to say something that's unfair to those, especially that in the government agencies or wherever they have helped refugees. I wouldn't say it's 100,000 because I don't think if, at least from what I know, and I may not know enough, but from what I know, I don't think if UK has got the infrastructure to help hundreds of thousands of refugees here. There was limited numbers, I would say. I mean, at least in the few hotels that I went, there was 300 families in one of the hotels, or something like 200 in the other. And this is only in the city. So they were in the rooms of hundreds in the hotels, definitely not thousands. But then at the same time, we could. I cannot put any numbers on those who could not make it via airplanes, and they took other routes to come into UK, and probably they are still on their way, and they have not made it into UK yet. But the numbers that we at least that we saw or visited in the hotels, they were in the rooms of hundreds and not thousands.
Okay. I just want to clarify, in case anybody from the State Department is listening right now, I do appreciate all the things that you have done. I just, sometimes it's frustrating when you're trying to get real answers about things and no one can give you those real answers. And, in their defense, there are some things that they can't share for reasons of privacy or trying to keep things from the Taliban. So just in case anybody from the State Department is listening, I also recognize that you have done amazing things for Afghans. So
absolutely.
I'm just going to put that out there. But it is, there can be two things true at the same time. So 5,000, maybe up to 5,000. And these families were in hotels, which here, we had many Afghans were stationed at military bases until refugee resettlement agencies were ready to take them in and put them in housing. Is that so? In the UK, was it hotels used and then moved on to refugee processing and housing, or how did that work?
One thing that I should truly thank the UK government for was that they were located comfortably in really good hotels. Yes, there are occasions where there has a mistreatment of refugees and immigrants have taken place. We cannot deny those. But at least for the numbers that I visited in some of the hotels, they were in very good hotels, like the chain hotels that we know that their services were good, and they were given the taken care of. And yes, we had, like you said, there were military bases for the military, I think, members in the UK as well. Not that I went to see any, I haven't, but I have heard that there are even. I'm not sure particularly at this stage where it was military base or is it just a few hotels that they are allocated only for military members, or people who work closely with with the intel services of US and UK. That I know, but not sure whether they were in military bases. We still have, I think there's still an ongoing case of, sadly, a place where it was actually made it to the news as well, that refugees were allocated in this floating, which probably was a boat or ferry previously, home that was that was accommodating up to 400 people, and they're men only. They were not for families. And there were complaints of the mistreatment of immigrants there. And also we have had a case of an agency, which I'd rather not to name, that they mistreated refugees badly, so much bad that the way they were given the houses was similar to a prison, and they were literally the treatment of the refugees and immigrants in there was no different to a treatment of a criminal or a prisoner. It has unfortunately made it to the news, and sadly that the way they were treated. There has been cases like that in the UK as well, unfortunately. Yeah.
Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. One thing I really wanted to talk about before we run out of time is the ARAP scheme. And I don't know if you all call it a scheme or if that was just the individual. I did talk with one individual who worked for both the UK and the US and was trying to get to the UK through ARAP, which, for those who are not familiar with it, it's the Afghan Relocations and Assistance Policy. And he was just beside himself because he couldn't get anyone to answer him from the UK about whether he qualified and all these things. And so it sounded a lot to me like the special immigrant visa program here that people have struggled with since its literal inception, way before the withdrawal. So I was hoping you can give us some background on ARAP and what has been happening with people who are trying to use that in the aftermath of the withdrawal.
So again, ARAP scheme was one of those other things that we heard that is coming, or there will be a scheme, but then by the time we get the second update, that scheme doesn't apply to certain, I don't know, whatever reasons. One of the things that, like ARAP scheme, whichever scheme was there for immigration, for migrants and refugees, was very vague in the UK. We were trying to find out. I know that certain, home here, at least the Home Office did I think the had a meeting of some sort with lawyers who worked in the immigration field to get their ideas, and whatever scheme that was based on some information gathering from people who are experts in this field. However, with majority of charitable organizations, including ours, we had no such communication from Home Office or from any government agencies to help us, that if there was such a scheme and people were getting in touch with us, where the help would have been, or how could we have been of help to them. It was like everyone knows it by name, and we know. I tried to look. We have got the government website, which is direct.gov.uk, and tried to look for the information. The information didn't make sense, or sometimes was just too technical or coded for us to understand. And I was also trying to at least take an initiative and call and within my network some immigration lawyers, again, they kept saying, I don't know how much honesty was in their answer, but they would have said, the answer would have been this, that yes, we're waiting to see, to get the latest update from the government. So there was no like centralized information where I could have gone and accessed that and given that, provided that help to whoever would have asked me. I mean, let's hope that an atrocity like this never happens again, never ever. But if it ever does, I would say that if in future any government or country who is willing to take in migrants should literally plan and make this properly, and maybe something centralized, especially now that we have got the technology, maybe an app or somewhere people could go and look for information. But at the time, was not sufficient for us and was not helpful, regardless of how much we tried to look to see how we can help people. And like the person who said that to yourself, so many other there were people literally messaging me on LinkedIn or finding through the charity, through the number, and asking. But unfortunately, since we did not have the tools and the resources and the information, there was not much we could help them with.
Yeah, which is such a frustrating feeling when you know that it's out there, right? I've had that feeling on many occasions, which is often why I'm contacting the State Department to go full circle there, is because people are begging me for help to save their lives. And I'm trying to use my ability as a writer to get those answers to help people. So it's such a disheartening feeling, and I share that hope that in the future we learn from. There are so many lessons that we need to draw from Afghanistan, militarily, politically, in terms of nation building, and if that's something we should be engaging in, and then cleaning up after making a mess, which especially when that involves human lives, like we've done a great deal of harm to many people here.
Unfortunately.
Well, my last question for you would be, I know that Awesta is doing work now with Afghans in the UK. And so what kind of work are you helping them with? What problems are they facing as they're trying to assimilate into this new culture? And what are things that you would want listeners to know about the situation right now?
So, thank you. That's a very good question. I mean, whether we like it or we don't like it, the refugees and the migrants are here now, whether it's UK or US or Europe. And a majority of the people, and when I say majority, I say with confidence, majority of the people that at least I met who came from Afghanistan are very capable of being, of playing a very good role in the societies that they are in. But they need support. And when I say support, first of all, one of the daunting impact that leaving one's home, and especially given in the state that they left their countries behind in 2021, is that mental health. We have, we had a 2-year project with to help in welcoming refugees, which was a initiative here by the UK government that's supported by many organizations who work really hard in trying to helping refugees in whatever capacity they can. But something that unfortunately would be an ongoing help that refugees would need is the mental health. Yes, we know that mental health is now, given that unfortunately the environment that our countries are and the world is heading towards, we wouldn't be surprised if this number increases. But with those who just enter UK or US and Europe, as I referred earlier, they will be like newborn adults into a society that they have got a lot to learn. And when I say a lot to learn, we had actually a campaign or kind of a mini project where our colleagues in other cities in the UK were helping them to, how to browse the stores or how to, the name of the items that they would need to buy, how to check the prices or how to make payments. All of those to the worries that the parents had. For instance, we had a case of a mother who, from the day that she met with someone from the diaspora, who was maybe a few years before her, and she said to her that, well, I mean, you're here now from Afghanistan, you might be thinking that you're safe, but you're not, because in this country, as a parent, you have got no power over your children, and your children do not belong to you anymore, so they could be taken away anytime from you. And this mother was so desperate that she was truly going mental, that why am I here? I did not come here for me to lose my children. So there's a lot of misinformation, and I think the charitable organization, with the support of the government, will play a fundamental role to help the people that are still actually living with this thought in their minds, and also education, for instance, for the children, for the parents. There is a lot of gap between the cultures, and for one to understand one culture to other. I recall a video clip which was made by one of the evacuees in the US, and I was watching that on YouTube. So this guy is very popular in Afghanistan, and very gently he makes a video clip to inform, of course, the people in Afghanistan, or his audience literally, about how Afghanistani people celebrate Eid. So he goes in a park, I don't know which county or city of US or state of US that it was, and he goes close to the kids, and he's trying to stroke them, or even trying to kiss them, and he gets bombarded by the diaspora, for the Afghanistan people who have been, of course, in the US before him, and say to them, hey, you cannot do that, it's not allowed, and especially when you're not asking their parents for their permission, you can't do that. So something as little as that. And of course, they wouldn't know that what would be the consequences, because they are not informed about the laws and rules of that country. And similar to that, cases we have had here in the UK, where refugees, for instance, the husbands still think that however they ruled in the country, they can do the same in here, and then they slap their children. Their children were taken away from them, all of them. And this family had to bring, I guess he was required to bring so many letters from so many organizations to guarantee that this will not happen again. They were going absolutely insane, the parents. Like, they thought that this was okay, the way they probably shouted or scolded their children, it was okay, but then they got caught, and a neighbor reported them. But I guess what's important is that for them to understand, and also more so that the parents themselves, they need that mental support. Sometimes they do things that they do not know. Beth, I recall the first few months that I was so myself, probably if I checked myself with the doctor, I suffered with depression and anxiety myself. I was behind with doing my taxes. I was getting fines and penalties when I was driving, because I could see things. I was there, I was somewhere physically. I was looking, for instance, looking at a text, reading it, but could not make sense of anything that I was reading. Only now, after 2 years, when I think about it, when I recall those days, I know that I was not normal. So let alone the people, the adults or parents or responsible adults who come with their children, let alone them, they are going to a lot of hurdles in order. I mean, I know some of them probably with the help of their families or friends who were here previously, they have managed to in a way settle, but still they're far from recovering from the shock of the immigration and leaving their countries behind. So I sometimes even think to run a campaign even about that they should not be neglected, because we all know that sometimes the crimes that have taken place by people who have later been diagnosed with mental health. There's a lot of the refugees, not just from Afghanistan, but even and saying that. One of the reasons we rebranded was this very reason, that when we started this project to help the refugees in Afghanistan, and we went to the hotels, we got approached by refugees from other countries such as Syria, Iraq, Sudan, Ethiopia, and then it made myself and my colleagues, we thought about it, and we said, well, we are maybe different countries and speak different languages. Luckily, I can speak Arabic and Farsi and English and understand and comprehend some few other languages, Hindi and all those as well. So I kind of communicate with their own languages with them. And then I thought that, what, we need to be inclusive. England is, I think it consists up to 128 ethnicities across the United Kingdom, if I'm not wrong. But this is the statistics that I had a few years back. So for us to be here, if we have the resources or the fundings, the ability and the passion, of course, and the commitment and dedication to help humanity, it doesn't have to be just limited to Afghanistan people. We can reach out and help other people as well. And that's why I think one of the key reasons we rebranded ourselves was that, to be able to reach out to as many, because regardless of which background they come from, our challenges and the struggles are the same. We all say that, when it comes to integration or assimilation or all that, it's not different. And that's why we rebranded, and we decided to be able to help people from other countries. Our recent or most recent help was getting winter clothes for refugees in one of the hotels in northwest of London, and there we made sure that the clothes reached not just the Afghanistan people, but all the refugees that were in those hotels. And we would love to continue and continue this work as much as we can afford, time-wise and resources-wise.
I love it. I think that's amazing, and you're right. We are all humans, and that's the one thing that I make sure I always remind people, like, Afghans are human beings. I use the word human over much, to the point that people are like, why do you say that? I'm like, to remind the people who might have, biases or not understand what it is to be an Afghan refugee, or to, all that we are all human. And I think that's spot on. Like, every human who is going through this is facing a struggle, and part of being a human is seeing that and being able to recognize the humanness in somebody else and reaching out. So I'm so glad for what you're doing, and that this has created so many good things. And before we close today, I wanted to, Michael and I usually conclude our episodes with a letter from an Afghan, because there are so many stories that remain that need to be told. And today's story is from a man we're calling Sheer, who worked for the Kabul airport for a number of years and is not able to qualify for an SIV because of this strange loophole in the SIV process, where if you worked under a contract that was paid for by the Afghan government, even if it was for an American company, you do not qualify for SIV. The contract must be paid for by the U.S. Now, interestingly, I think the U.S. paid some 60% of the Afghan government's budget. So when you're quibbling here, it's like, I mean, he should apply. He should be able to apply for SIV. That's my opinion. I'm not anybody in the government, obviously. But anyway, here is Sheer's story in his own words. I lost my job. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead. So just adding to what you said in terms of SIV and all that, we have always had our contacts on the grounds with people. I recall a telephone conversation that I had with one of the guards of a government building that was adjacent to the office where the passport office, where passports were being issued in Afghanistan, in Kabul. And this is literally a few months, maybe a couple of months after the collapse, that they were telling me that at night, when everyone's, of course, the offices are supposed to be, supposedly closed, there were vans of people coming, that they were not from Afghanistan, and the guards could very well recognize that they were of a different nationality. And his guesses was that they were from Pakistani nationals who were Pakistani Taliban, and they were being issued Afghanistan passport to those nationals. And then this was only at night. So daytime, everything was back to normal, and nighttime. And from what he had calculated over those many days that this was happening, up to 5,000 people were given the passport, Afghanistan passport, to non-Afghanistan nationals. So there has been a lot of exploitation of this situation, unfortunately. And I wouldn't be surprised that in a few years' time we end up with a good few hundreds of people that came from Afghanistan claiming that they are from the country, but they were not. And I wouldn't be surprised that if the processor would be taking, whether this is IV, whatever is taking time, now that the dust, at least we can say, has settled, maybe the organizations are taking them. I'm not defending them,
Sure.
not speaking on their behalf, but at least something that I would say to myself, at least, that this could be happening. And also the struggle for an Afghanistan person from Afghanistan to go and get, for instance, a visa, is not just going and getting a visa. Unfortunately, our neighboring countries used this situation and this atrocity on Afghanistan a lot to their advantage, so much that a ticket to Pakistan, to Islamabad, that would have cost probably $200 or $300. The cost of that very ticket, that was not a VIP or business person, business class, had increased to $2,500. The price of the visa to get into Pakistan, the torture that people had to go through, just passing the border for safety, of course, from Afghanistan into Pakistan. Same thing, unfortunately, same thing with Iran. And we know up north, Tajikistan, given that's a very small country and it needs help on, as is, had closed its borders just for its security and safety for a few months or maybe a year or more. And also, I had actually a trip in Tajikistan as well, where I met with refugees in the area where they are living. The state that refugees, and they're all waiting to be taken out of Dushanbe. So many times there has, at least when I was there, 2 planes took refugees, a good few hundreds of them, into Canada and into US. So the struggles are not just that waiting time for them to get their visa, whether it's US or Canada or whichever country, but also the route that they will take just to reach somewhere where they can get the visa, collect their visa, and also the gatekeepers, who each one of them will be asking for bribery and asking them for money, regardless of whether they have it or not. Right now, we have got reports of thousands of Afghanistan people in the prison cells in Pakistan because they couldn't give them money, they couldn't afford to buy the visa, they ended up in prison cells. So and same thing for Iran, and probably I don't know that I have a report about Tajikistan. I truly cannot speak on, but definitely Western countries where we know and people do pass on the reports. This is not just though I would say the waiting, if they're in a safe place, is perfectly fine, but to be on their path, on route to get to somewhere is a nightmare.
Sure. Turkey too has been
Absolutely.
heinous
Yeah.
to Afghan immigrants or refugees who are there illegally.
Unfortunately.
So it is not a friendly world for Afghan refugees right now. And it's not friendly for the people
And
who are
your
stuck in
refugees.
Afghanistan. Yeah, that's true too. Well, I will read Sheer's story. It's another, just the heartbreak. There's so much heartbreak, which is really unfortunate. I lost my job when the Taliban came and I'm having bad days. Please, I need your help, my dear sister. I have documents from an American and we applied in SIV, but that person does not answer. I don't understand why. I need your help. Please talk to that leader and help me get out of this bad situation. During my duties in Kabul International Airport, our team arrested many smugglers and now they are free because of the Taliban. When the Taliban came and captured Afghanistan, I and my family were deeply concerned about our life and our future. We are in the most dangerous situation. We are so panic-stricken and horrified, and we have been constantly threatened by the Taliban and unknown persons. My life will continue in most danger as long as I remain here in Afghanistan. To protect myself and my family, I have to evacuate. I will be in very bad and hard situation to shelter my identity for fear of retribution by Taliban, ISIS, criminal elements, and terrorist groups, and they will not have mercy on me and my family. I changed my residence many times because Taliban and insurgents are searching me in Kabul city, and I hide myself in a relative's place because the Taliban do not forgive those people who worked with foreign forces in Afghanistan. I have faced serious and ongoing threats in my family because I have been reorganized several times by relatives, villagers, and neighborhoods, and it is widely known that it is a big reason for the Taliban. As I worked as an officer, please consider I am committed to becoming an American citizen and will work hard to provide a better future for myself and my family in America. I hope to get humanitarian support for my application. Now, I asked Sheer for his permission to share that story because it's just one of so many. He didn't
Absolutely.
contact me to share his story. He contacted me to see if I could help him reach a supervisor, because without a supervisor's letter of recommendation, you cannot apply for SIV. Sheer may very well be able to apply for SIV. He can't through the one group, like I said, because of that stupid administrative issue. The other one, unknown. And I did reach out to his supervisor, and once again, it's a non-response. Not even a, well, he doesn't apply, so I can't send him an LOR. Nothing. Like, no response. So who knows what's happening there? And that's one of, I asked him to read this just to show to listeners the kind of insanity that an Afghan has to go through even to qualify, or just to be able to submit papers before even going through any of the rigmarole of the process.
Yeah.
So I appreciate Sheer for allowing me to share that story. And I will continue to pray for him and so many others who are in that same limbo, because the period for submitting an SIV application is drawing to a close. And once that passes, you won't be able to submit a new SIV application at present. So, thank you to Sheer, and to anybody else who wants to send in a letter. You can always do that through the Afghanistan Project Podcast at gmail.com. Send us anything you want to tell us. Details always make for a better story, and we can absolutely give you anonymity if you need it. Zainab, thank you for this amazing conversation. I learned so much, and I really appreciate you being here.
Thank you very much. You are doing a great work yourself. Honestly, just like I came across your videos and, saw that and how we got to introduce ourselves to each other. I'm sure there will be many people who will be coming and sharing their stories with yourself also. And just one last point on the contacts. We touched, because on ARAP scheme there was the same thing, a helpline was given for people to call the number, and I tried calling that number so many times to see why is it that's not working, and the number was actually a dead number. So there has been, unfortunately, a lot of that miscommunication, misinformation, lack of it, a total no information situation for people who have been who served to thinking that they will be helped one day, but unfortunately what the help that they were promised, they never received.
It's very heartbreaking, and I'm just glad. It's always good to have more people to share that story and to remind the world that this has been a great injustice, and no one's going to go quietly into that good night about it. So thank you for speaking up, and thank you to all our listeners for sharing your time and supporting the people of Afghanistan. And Tashakor, we hope to see you again soon.
قابل التشكر ريس. Anytime. It's my pleasure. Take care. Thank you.